Okay, good morning, everybody. We are here with two very special guests for the Leadership Forum at Silver Bay podcast. And the Leadership Forum at Silver Bay, for 101 years, business, organizational, community, educational, and citizen leaders have met on the shores of Lake George to address the most pressing human and leadership issues of their times. These leaders have come to the Leadership Forum to understand, shape, and deepen the skills required to lead an increasingly complex and changing world. Economic, social, and political challenges around the globe continue to underscore one essential truth: leadership matters. If you're interested in learning more about the Leadership Forum at Silver Bay, please head to www.leadershipforumatsilverbay.com to learn more and how you can get involved. So you're probably wondering, who am I? I am the 101st chair of the Leadership Forum at Silver Bay, and we are approaching things a little bit differently this year as we enter the second century of the forum. We are concentrating on how failure grows us and on how failure can be a huge part of our leadership story. For me specifically, my name is Donna Scarola, and I am a technologist turned HR practitioner. I've worked at software companies building HR software such as Workday and Reflective, but now I help curate performance strategy at Johnson & Johnson. I also teach at San Francisco State University, where I teach workforce development and performance enablement. And in my spare time, I watch far too much Netflix and am on the forever hunt for the perfect skincare routine. Next, I'd like to introduce the two guests for today, who will really be bringing us into this wonderful story that was formed at the Leadership Forum 2 summers ago. So first, we have Rob Salafia, and Rob combines 2 decades of experience as a top leadership development executive with a well-established career in the performing arts. He has a passion for coaching leaders to develop their presence, telling compelling stories, and establishing authentic connections. He is the author of the book, Leading from Your Best Self: Develop Your Executive Poise, Presence, and Influence to Maximize Your Potential by McGraw-Hill. What's unique about Rob is that for the first half of his career, he was a performing artist, where he traveled the globe delivering his unique one-person variety show. Rob is a lecturer at MIT Sloan Management and is a master executive coach with the Leadership Center at MIT. As a speaker, learning partner, and workshop facilitator, Rob has worked with Fortune 500 companies, including Philips International, Abbott, Merrill Lynch, Fidelity, and the Royal Bank of Scotland. Our second guest, who is a huge part of Rob's story, is Hope. She is a graduate of Georgetown University and currently resides in Massachusetts working for an international company. She's passionate about serving others and developing herself, and she is so grateful for all of Rob's support and guidance. So happy to have both of you, first of all, before we dive into the questions. So thank you for your time and kind of your energy and passion around this and retelling this story.
Thanks, Donna.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So the first thing is, Rob, why did you write this book?
Great question. Well, most of us are evaluated on how well we show up and navigate the work environment and culture.
Mm-hmm.
Are you promotable? Do others listen to your ideas? Will you be a good fit on the team? Many times this pressure can undermine our confidence. So the book is designed to help the reader bring the best version of themselves to their role in any situation. It'll provide stories, exercises, and practices that are clear and memorable. You can put into practice right away. The interesting thing about the book is I tap into my background in theater and performing arts, the discipline of practice, developing a learning mindset. All of these things are critical when we want to enhance our confidence.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. And I've read the book personally and have found so much value from it. And I think that is a great explanation of kind of where it brings value to a person in their career and as they're trying to navigate. So So thank you for that. I'd love to know, so for those of you who have already read the book, you may know the story of hope, and it's this thread throughout. But for those who haven't, can you really elaborate and dive into why this story is significant and how it came to be?
So this it was about a year and a half ago. It was my first time at the Leadership Forum at Silver Bay, which, as you know, it's on Lake George, beautiful Lake George. The Adirondack Mountains are in the background. It's on a beautiful campus, and there's a 100-year-old building. That's where we do most of the programming. Typical kind of conference setup, big round tables with big white tablecloths. And I'm sitting with this early career woman, Hope, and we finish an exercise. And then she turns to me and she says, there's a VP in my organization that told me I need to increase my executive presence. And she lets out this big sigh. And I chuckled a little bit. And I said, well, I'm sure that that's difficult. This is something that I actually work on. Would you like to have lunch? And so we did. And so when we sat down for lunch and I asked her, I said, so tell me a little bit more. She said, well, this VP, very strong personality, and our approaches are very different. And so we clash quite a bit. And being a very powerful person as she is, when I get in front of her, I kind of collapse a little bit. My shoulders slump. I lose my breath, and I can't put my ideas across really powerfully. And so that's the impression she gets of me. So I paused and I acknowledged that. And I said, that can be difficult. You're not alone. And then I asked her a question. I said, tell me a time when you felt in your best self, the best version of yourself. And that's the whole idea of the book. It's designed to help you bring the best version of yourself forward. She pauses. Big smile comes on her face. I said, what's going on? She goes, well, I play flute. And I perk up and I go, really? Okay, tell me more. I understand. I played a number of different instruments and I know what that takes. I said, show me what it looks like when you play flute. And immediately she sat up tall in her seat. She lifted her arms up in the flute position, and I could tell that's not comfortable for everyone right away. I could tell that she had practice and discipline behind that. And I asked her, I said, how does that feel? She said, it feels great. I said, tell me more. She said, well, I'm part of a marching band, Columbus Day Parade. We won every year. And we were taught to play to be heard. So not only did I have this structure, a posture, right, but also strong breath control. So tell me more. She said, well, I ran the flute section. I was in charge of them, and I was tough. Now, what I would say to them is, it's not when you're playing that counts. It's when you're not playing that counts. The judges will take a quarter point off here, quarter point off there. That's the difference between winning and losing. And then I started to see her, her body started to move and she started to hum. I said, okay, what are you doing now? And she said, I always have a song in my mind before I play to get myself in the groove. Right. So I paused and I went, that's really interesting. And she had these 4 keys came out of her story. 1, she had a signature stance. That's the posture that suggested to her through discipline and practice, confidence. She had she was taught to play to be heard. She had breath control. We switched that and moved that into speak to be heard. She had a mindset of excellence. As a leader, she was very rigorous with her flute section. And so we suggested, can you apply that same rigor to yourself? And the 4th one was, she had a way to find her groove. She knew how to get into the flow of things beforehand. And so she said, I have this really big presentation coming up, and I'm really nervous about it. And that VP is going to be right center in the front row. And so, Hope, could you tell us a little bit about what you did when you went back? Because that's the most important thing is when we're trying to learn, there's discipline and practice. We can learn something in our heads. We can reconnect with a prior experience. That's what this is about. Then we have to put it into practice. How did you put it into practice?
So the absolute first thing I did was I went to my mentor, who I knew was also going to be part of this meeting. And I told her about the experience I had had at the leadership forum. And I asked her to be my person in the meeting that I could look to and look for encouragement, but also share with her what I was looking to accomplish from this meeting. So I shared with her my 4 keys, and she came up to me right before the meeting, and she was like, have you gotten into your signature stance, Hope? Have you listened to that piece of music, and are you playing it in your head right now? And I said yes, and I said yes, and I was so grateful for her holding me accountable. And I went before the leadership team and I presented my presentation, and I got so many messages from people in that room about how floored they were by my presentation and how I had grown so significantly in such a short amount of time. And nobody knew my story about what I was working on and what I was trying to achieve. But there were so many people in that room that saw my change. And the VP even came up to me afterwards and said that I did such an awesome job.
This is fantastic, isn't it? And what I love about that story, thank you, Hope. What I love about that story is that she didn't have to do anything differently. She didn't have to learn something new. She just had to go back and remember what she already knew.
Yeah. No, it's such a powerful story. And I'd love to even take a step back and, for me specifically, to explain to, our listeners, for me, it's so magical that this even kind of occurred, all of these events, because Hope went to the leadership forum that summer because I was unable to. I was out in the Bay Area and I couldn't get away from work. And it's just really amazing to kind of see how this came together and how it was such a formative time in Hope's career, and that the alignment of the need and support she needed at that moment really came together, and that other people could see that change so quickly because of the work that you both did together and the effort and time that you put into this. So it's just really amazing to hear and obviously read about. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I'd love to know, Hope, where are you now, and kind of what have been your greatest learnings working with Rob and doing this work?
So it has been quite a year. Rob and I have worked together diligently every month. We've worked on my voice, my body posture, and we've really focused in on my 4 keys. And I have to tell you, it has so incredibly paid off. I took a new job at the same organization, but this job forces me every day to stand up in front of many different types of audiences, and gives me the opportunity to really practice this executive poise and presence. So it's been this great blessing, this job, because, I need kind of my own stage to be able to practice all of the great things that Rob has been teaching me. So that has been so incredibly awesome and quite the accomplishment for the year. And I'd love to share a quick story about kind of the new feedback that I've been getting as well. So
Yeah.
I presented a new storytelling activity to my president's team. And basically at the end of each of our team meetings, one person shares a story they look back on for motivation. And so I kicked it off at our December meeting, and I shared a story about achieving my childhood dreams. So back when I was 10 or 11 years old, I dreamed of performing at Madison Square Garden with my red electric acoustic ukulele. I had no idea if I was ever going to be able to achieve this dream. Fast forward to graduate school, I was in the pep band. The men's basketball team had made it to the Big East. And about 4 years ago, I walked out into a packed Madison Square Garden and got to perform. While it was with my flute and not my ukulele, I still achieved my original childhood dreams. So I shared this story and with a little more detail and depth to my team. And one of the directors, after I finished sharing my stories, said in front of everybody, "Hope, could I ask that you read to us at the end of every meeting?"
Isn't that great? I love that.
And I knew
amazing.
At that moment when she said those words that I had made such a significant step change in my presence, my poise, my presentation skills, all in a matter of a year.
And isn't that so amazing? Because it two things, the actual transference of you ended up playing your flute, and that was the exact story that you gave Rob, right? A year and a half before, of when you were your best self. So I just find that like almost, I have goosebumps, like thinking about like, wow, that was the example you gave of your best self. But then also just being seen and how you always felt, which is that you were, this human being with the dreams and stories, as we all are, these very complex beings with lots of wisdom, but we're not always seen that way in our organizations because we haven't done the work that Rob teaches, which is how do we transfer all that stuff in our head and our hearts to other people so that we connect, so we get them, so that we're gotten, right? That we're seen and heard. And so I just love that.
Well, you bring up such great points, Donna. The thing that happens a lot, this is a book, right? So you have a book, people read a lot, they listen to podcasts, and then it goes, how do we retain it? How do we actually grow? What happened with Hope was that we met on a regular basis, and she grabbed onto it, knew why she needed to work on it, and practiced it put it into practice situationally. This follows sort of what I call the apprentice style of learning. This is the way artists learn. It goes novice, apprentice, journeyman, master. So if you read a book and you get an idea, you say, "Oh, I'd really like to practice that." You're in the novice phase.
Okay.
That's the most fragile because you can bounce out really quickly. A month later, you're thinking to yourself, "Oh yeah, I really needed to do that," but you never do it. The idea is you have to put it into practice right away. You have to create a system for learning, and I think that's what Hope did right away. So you get into the wood shop, you get a feel for all of the different tools, all the different things that you need to practice. You get a facility with it. When you start to put it into practice professionally, you go into the journeyman or the professional level. Mastery happens without you even knowing it, if you do it consistently enough. And I think that's what Hope is beginning to experience, is that the way she just told that story, it was authentic, it was real, it was hers. And that that doesn't just happen.
Right.
And I think that for me, that has been my greatest learning, that, Rob honed in on how much I connected with music, and he knew that I already had the experience of how practice makes perfect, and that was already within me. So we leveraged that connection that I have with music, and I really looked back on my experience of how much did I practice to master a 1-page piece? Well, if I need to master this speech or this presentation, how much time do I need to put into it? And whether it was me sitting in the car driving to work, talking in a Dracula voice or in a Darth Vader voice to myself, or sitting in my mentor's office, practicing as well with my posture and my stance and, running through my presentation.
Wait a minute, Hope. I can't let it go. The Dracula voice and the Darth Vader, Luke, I am your father. Okay. So that's one of the exercises that I do in my programs, and Hope and I practiced. And it's funny, it's goofy, but what it does, it actually gets you into the lower, wider aspects of your voice. So if anyone needs to practice, there's 3 simple keys for developing your voice. One is you breathe in and speak out. Breathe in and speak out. Most people breathe in, breathe out, and then start to speak. When you have a full, let's say, volume of air inside of your body, that's powerful, and then your voice can come out. The second one is resonance. That's the wide part of your voice, the deeper part of your voice. That's the Luke, I am your father part of your voice.
Right.
And then it's articulation. Clear, precise, articulate, so that people hear all of your words. You're not swallowing words, and you're giving people your words when you speak to them. So those 3 are very powerful aspects of vocal presence.
Yeah. And
sorry.
No, go ahead, Hope.
And practicing those, that is what really helped change the vocal aspects of my presentations. And, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think, in the last year, it has taught me to be patient in development. It's taught me to be patient with myself. And then the second learning that I'll share is around celebrating and sharing the accomplishments. So the day that I shared the story about the director asking if I could read at the end of every meeting, called up Rob and told him my story and thanked him for all that he had invested in me. And I told my mentor as well and thanked her as well. So celebrate them and appreciate those that have walked alongside you to get you to the next step.
Which also brings another point, which is whoever reads the book, if you're a people leader, it says, how are you investing in your direct reports, the people that are around you? Do you work with them? Do you encourage them? Do you help them to grow and develop along the way, and celebrate their successes along the way as well?
Definitely. And I what I love about the book, and it's exactly what kind of Hope has described, is that it's doing the work and actually like those little milestones, not only recognizing others and how they've helped you, but also the like continuousness. And I know we've talked about this almost like grit, right? Angela Duckworth, like just like you have to do the work. And to your point as well, Rob, like it's not just reading the book and saying, okay, now I'm a perfect people leader and I can present so great and people will think I'm this highly influential, mesmerizing human being. No, this takes practice the same way it does in performing arts, right? Like an actor is not just innate talent. It is work and some more work. And that's what I really love about the book is it shows you how to do that part, which is where I think most people struggle with. We can grasp ideas, but it's hard to grasp behavior change. And how do I implement? How do I bring that into my life and my work so that other people can see that I've read and acquired new knowledge, not just I can say I learned this, theoretical model. So I find that really helpful, and I think a huge differentiator from a lot of leadership books that I've read in the past. So that's what I've personally gotten from it, and it's so great to see the example of what a year's hard work looks like in Hope.
I love that. A year's hard work. So when someone picks up the book, it's broken up into a number of chapters that, depending upon who's reading it and what you need to work on, you can go to those chapters. The introduction and the first chapter really set the scene. And then a number of other chapters come along. One in particular, The Art of Landing. There's an exercise there called Breathe, Connect, Land. So it's 3 words that allow you to center yourself. It's a centering exercise. You take a breath in, you connect with your balance, you connect with the purpose why you're going to a meeting. Then you land inside of yourself. An example of this is developing poise. So I'm working with this young career fellow north of Boston, and his dad asked me to work with him. It was a succession planning engagement. Really smart, really great young executive. Really fast. So I'm sitting in an office waiting for him to come in for a coaching session. He's 3 minutes late. The door flies open, and like a streak just runs to the chair. It was like I could see the papers flying up in the air, like you see it in a cartoon.
Yeah.
I look at him and I said, Brian, can you do me a favor? Can you get back up, walk back outside, close the door, and put into practice what we've been practicing. Put your hand on the handle of the doorknob. Take a breath in. Connect with why you're here, what you want to get out of this, who you're going in to see, and land inside of yourself. Open the door, step over the threshold, breathe, take a breath in, give me your eyes, connect with me, land with me. When he did that, his whole presence changed. I actually found myself standing up and extended my hand to him. Now, think about this. Think about a presence in 3 ways. One is how people experience you, how they experience themselves when they're with you, the story they tell about you when you're gone. So if he's in this, and it was a car dealership, if he's in a dealership and he's walking around and he's always 2 to 3 minutes late, he's always really fast, he's always kind of like preoccupied, how are people experiencing him?
Right.
They're experiencing him like that. How are they experiencing themselves? Maybe I'm not that important for you. Maybe all of these other messages gets sent. And then what do they say about him when he's gone?
Right.
Brian, he's always preoccupied. I'm not really that important in this process.
Right. Right. And it's so true. I mean, we hold on to feelings much more associated with memory than verbal text, right? Or just, verbal content. I rarely remember exactly what was said in a conversation, but I know how I felt when I was with that person. And we're in a constant exchange of energy, right? With people, passing them in the supermarket, at work, etc. And that's why, you can feel deflated, going back to kind of the beginning of the story, especially at work. You can feel deflated around certain people because it's so much more than what they say, but it's how they present themselves, which transfers to you, right? Whether it's their feeling of contempt or being better than, or it's something of even not wanting to take up space and you feel like that person is quite meek or unimportant to you. That's all energy. And so that's why I find this very fascinating, because it gets into that. It teaches you how to take your best energy, the energy you really want people to see, but that sometimes we almost sabotage ourselves with the rushing and the being quick or not trying to take up too much space. So I find it so powerful because I relate to so much of it.
Well, what's really interesting too is that this is not just for early career people. This is
Right.
for mid-career leaders in transition. At MIT, I work with probably 50 mid-career leaders a year in their mid-career EMBA and Sloan Fellows program.
Right.
The transition into new roles. How do we see ourselves? How do we step into being an individual contributor to a people leader?
Mm-hmm.
This is equally as important to senior leaders.
Absolutely.
You think as senior leaders say, well, they should know this stuff. I work with a lot of folks at the top of the house,
Mm-hmm.
Executive suite, senior leadership across an organization. These same skill sets apply. One that's really interesting is what I call it the trap of the professional persona. So I'm working with this Ernst & Young and working with the valuation group. We had about 85 consultants in the room, and I wanted to do, it was a full day activity, and I wanted to do a listening exercise. So I asked one of the leaders who were organizing the event if one of them would want to get up in front of the group and share something, a situation or problem that they were working on that they were struggling with. And this one fellow stepped up, 6'3". This guy was like, wow, like put together, the suit, the hair, everything was just like, it was perfect. and he said, I want to do this. I said, great. Okay. So the time came, he walked up onto the stage. He took his coat off slowly. He unhinged his tie quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And he told the story like 2, 3, 4 minutes. We did the full exercise. It went great. At the end of the day, he came up to me specifically and he said, I want to thank you. That was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. And let me tell you why. I've been working my whole life to develop a professional persona, this veneer of invincibility, that I had to be perfect, that I had to have all the answers. Well, that's not what it's about. Number one, it's always been uncomfortable, and I'm far from perfect. Just ask my wife. And if we're really going to get to do our best work collectively together, we have to be transparent and vulnerable with each other. We have to be willing to ask for help when we need it. Even it's not about having all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I love that. And I know we're kind of talking about this already, but are there any other areas that you think for people that they're trying to develop in themselves professionally, or even how workplaces can use this work to make a better culture? And I believe, a better culture always leads to usually better leaders. Do you have any advice for us, Rob, on how organizations can use this work to help leaders at all levels?
Sure. One of the best exercises that I heard, and this came out of one of my coaching sessions, was to pick a book. You can choose this book. You can choose any number of books. And with your direct reports or your team, have a leadership club, a leadership book club. In other words, have the team read a chapter and then discuss it. Now, it just so happens that this is laid out. Each chapter is its own world. Mm-hmm. So, like for an example, developing physical and vocal presence. If you liked some of the exercises that Hope had described, that I had described on the call, these are all laid out very well in that chapter 5. You can go in and it'll give you an idea of what is a signature stance. How do you go about acquiring it and working with it and developing it? A vocal presence. How do you go about developing it? The exercises will be there. Expanding into conflict. Conflict is something that many people I work with are conflict averse. They don't know how to address directly an issue with someone for fear of harming the relationship or getting into an awkward moment. And there's a great story in that chapter about Jerry Seinfeld. I love comedy, but he talked about when he came up with a style of dealing with hecklers. And so rather than like a Borscht Belt comedian would have a funny line back, he would go into almost like a psychotherapist, and he would move into the person. He would say, wow, it really sounds like you have a lot of energy around that. It really, tell me, is there something going on in your life that is, and he would he would lean into he would expand into, that's what I call expanding into conflict. And so rather than pull back, lean into the person and inquire. Maybe because behind every person, there's a story or there's something else going on.
Yeah.
In the book, there's transitioning, the art of transitioning. That's an area that many leaders struggle with, especially moving from an individual contributor to a people leader.
Yeah.
Realizing that it's a shift in mindset, role, and identity. There's also for senior leaders some really great work in developing authenticity. There's a self-discovery process. Story sharing, storytelling, and meaning making. Our role as leaders, we need to be able to tell and share stories. That's what our role is. Mm-hmm. If you remember, even in this, how many stories have we told already in this on this call? That's how we create meaning for others, and work needs to be meaningful for people, for them to bring their best self to that work. Right.
Absolutely. And I laughed a little before because I can completely relate to the conflict adversity. I am a huge, I am someone who does that a lot. So that's why I'm laughing. And I think your work has been so helpful for that, and kind of not even just learning how to navigate it, but how to feel it and not avoid it, in your body, right? When you talk about landing. So I just find that it's humorous because I remember just constantly avoiding it, and thinking that was the right thing to do. And I was somehow sparing others, but how it was actually not helping them at all, and not helping myself in my own presence. So I find it so interesting.
There's one more point that I'd like to bring to bear, and this is the idea of creating a learning organization. So a lot of what we've been talking about is leading self. So I always think leading, we have to think about our own development in three areas: leading ourselves, leading others, leading organization. So a lot of what we've been talking about is leading ourselves, but leading others is very important. And I'm in a conversation with a coaching client yesterday that said, one of the senior leaders came, and she works in a hospital environment, and this person came into the environment. They pulled all of the team together, and he made a small comment to her and said, he looked at the carpet. The carpet had not been changed in 25 years. And he said, wow, that carpet looks kind of old and ratty. And she nodded. She said, yes, it hasn't been changed in 25 years. He said, that's something that would make a big difference. And I'd love us to do something about that. And what I'd love for you to do is if you can get some momentum on this, feel free to reach out to me directly. I really want us to bring up every part of our game here. What it did for her is that freed her up to it gave her some agency. It gave her some autonomy. She was actually able to come up with a solution herself for that. And they've been engaged in conversation ever since. What she said to me was it gave her permission, and it lifted her up. What she ended up doing was she did the same thing for her team members, and she's seeing the same results. So it's sort of a virtuous cycle. It really does start from the top, but we have to not just tell people what to do, but give them the ability to come up with solutions on their own. and make sure that there's a connection there of investment in our people.
Absolutely. And I like how you break that out by leading self, leading people, and leading organizations, because there are so many layers to our leadership styles and our journey. And I think we could be working on one area, but neglecting the other, which is fine, depending on what you're trying to work on. But I think it is a nice separation of kind of those three tiers and the various differences in work that needs to be applied, to each. So I love that. This has been so wonderful. I want to just ask if either of you have anything else to add, any kind of wisdom for our listeners before we end.
I think for me, just being patient with yourself. I mean, like I said before, dedicate the time that you need and, commit to it. You'll see changes. And, but all in all, you might have a couple of steps forward and a step back. Rely on the people around you that are helping you, and just truly take your time and be patient.
Mm.
And Donna, I'll finish with a quick story, which is probably many people know. So a woman gets out of a cab on 57th Street in New York City. She sees a fellow walking down the sidewalk with a violin case, and she runs up to him and says, "Excuse me, sir, how do you get to Carnegie Hall?" And with a wry smile, he looks at her and he says, "Practice." So it takes practice.
I love it. Yeah.
It takes practice. Figure out what you want to and need to learn, and practice and develop a system for it. And you'll see progress.
Yep. I love that. Well, thank you both again for your time and your story. And I know I've gotten a lot out of it. I'm sure many others will as well. And I hope you have a great day. So thank you again.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
Bye.